Raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome to the Raising Cain Show, Mountain Edition, where we dive into the pulse of innovation and progress in West Virginia. I'm your host, Nate Cain, and today we have a truly transformative figure with us, none other than James L. Estep, the visionary president and CEO of the High Technology Foundation. Since taking the helm in 2000, James has been instrumental in sculpting the I-79 Technology Park into a beacon of economic diversification and technological advancement in our state. With over 400 acres and 800,000 square feet of Class A office and lab space, this park has become a home to some of the nation's most critical operations, including NOAA's Environmental Security Computing Center and major satellite ground stations. Joining us today, we're going to discuss the future of technology industry in West Virginia. That may not be something that most people think about when they think about West Virginia, but the impact of these high-tech developments and what lies ahead for our mountain state is going to be critically important to our future as a state. So please welcome James to our show. James, thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you, and please call me Jim.
All right, I will do. I'm going to take off my background here because it is squeaking out. So there we go. A little less exciting, but that's all right. This is going to be much better. Speaking of technology, I am going through right now, we're selling our house. And so I've got to take all of my pictures and all my background stuff off the walls. And as we're getting ready to show it, but so it's a pretty boring background here, but that's all right. It's going to be an exciting topic to talk about. So, James, let's start with, I want to ask you, how did you get involved in this? What was your, the onus for you getting into, technology and deciding to build this or be a part of this park?
Well, I have always been very interested in technology, especially math. And when I was in high school a long time ago, I really was excited about computer technology. So when I went to college, I decided to study computer science, and I attended the Western Indian Institute of Technology in Montgomery. And when I was in college, it kind of dawned on me that when I graduated, I was probably going to have to go someplace else besides West Virginia to pursue a career. And that, that really bothered me, but it was what it was. And so I finished my bachelor degree, spent about a year on active duty with the U.S. Army. I had went through the ROTC program in college. And then I came back to Morgantown and got a master's degree in computer science. And then I went to work for Unisys Corporation. And I was based mostly out of Reston, Virginia. But of course, when you're working for a company like that, they have you everywhere but where you're supposed to be.
Right.
And just by some weird fluke, Unisys was working on a project in, of all places, Fairmont, West Virginia. And it was back in the early days when the FBI had just started to come here and the NASA was getting started. And I just by chance came back to the area, and I was working for Unisys there for a year or two, and they were getting ready to move and I was going to have to relocate. And I had heard about this effort in the region, a bunch of stakeholders, including people like Senator Byrd and Congressman Mullen and the president of WVU, President Fairmont. They were trying to come up with some strategies for diversifying the economy. And they had asked Unisys if they could loan a couple of folks to them as they were working on this project. And I ended up being one of them. And as I was helping them and seeing what they were doing, they asked me if I wanted to kind of stay on and not go with Unisys, but stay on and help. And because of the experiences I had in realizing I was going to have to go pursue a career somewhere else, I decided, yeah, I think I could do this for a couple of years and see what happens. And so I left Unisys, went to work for what was the High Tech Foundation at the time. And honestly, I'd only planned to do it for a few years, but that was 20 some years ago, and here I am. And so I just, once I got into the project, once I started helping out, I developed a passion for it. And I thought about, all my friends who were dispersed around the country pursuing various careers. And I mean, so, the ones that wanted to be in the coal industry or timber or something like that, there were jobs. But for those who wanted to pursue other careers, there really weren't. And so that really stuck with me. And I really developed a passion to want to try to change that, not only for myself, but for other kids like me.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something that's so, I think, important today, is having options for young people. It seems like, one of the biggest problems that we have in the state has been when people, graduate high school, they move on to other places and they don't tend to stay here, because unless they wanted to get into coal, or unless they wanted to be in timber, or, agriculture, there were no options for them. And, and that is something that, that's one of the reasons I actually had reached out to Jeannie, my booker for the show. And I just said, hey, remember when I was doing the campaign and we went and I met with Jim Estep. I said, can you get in contact with him? I want to have him on the show because I think what he's doing there is important. I want to let people know about this, not just people in West Virginia, but people outside of the state, because I think that we have something very unique here in the state. And that is that we've got massive energy resources. And in the second half of the show, I really want to get into that. But
Absolutely.
Where the future of technology is going, we are going to need massive energy resources for it. And what better place than to build that right here in West Virginia? And kind of, you have the best of both worlds. You got the natural beauty of West Virginia, and we've got all these natural resources. We could build the state into a technology powerhouse, with the right vision ahead. And so I'm actually very excited to have you on. And I want to get, so for those who do not know about the I-79 Technology Park, because honestly, until I ran, I had no idea about it. I mean, I hadn't really left the Eastern Panhandle, and then I'm driving down and I'm like, what is all this technology park stuff? This is West Virginia. That exists here?
Yeah.
So tell us about what was the initial vision for the I-79 Technology Park, and how has that vision evolved over the years under your leadership?
Sure. So, and going back to a point you made earlier, part of the challenge economically for our state has been insufficient economic diversification. As you point out, there are great jobs in the mineral extraction industry and coal and tourism and things like that. We've got some great occupations there, but let's face it, not everybody wants to work in those careers that are born in West Virginia. And so if you look at all of the economic studies that have been conducted about the various states for decades, it's always the case that West Virginia is recognized as not being quite economically diverse enough. And so, that's a big issue, and that's a core motivation for what the High Tech Foundation's evolved in. But it goes a step further, and that is that West Virginia has also always been last place in educational attainment. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally last place for like 50 or 60 years. And it always bothers me, because when people hear that, they immediately think this must mean that West Virginians don't value education. Well, that's not the case at all, obviously. what educational attainment measures is it takes a snapshot of your workforce, and it says, okay, how many jobs in this workforce require an education past high school? And the fewer the jobs you have, the lower your rank. Now, that's problematic because if you look at the national economy, the fastest growing sector has been for the last 50 years the information sector or the technology knowledge sector.
Right.
And so the problem for us has been is that we did not have an indigenous kernel of that type of workforce that would allow us to grow into that national economy that's been growing, so fast. And that's been a handicap for us. That low educational attainment ranking has been a handicap for us. And until we can address that and try to fix that handicap, it's going to be a problem. Now, and so to answer your question, the whole purpose of the High Tech Foundation and the development of the I-79 Technology Park has been to help build up that business case for a knowledge sector in West Virginia.
That's great. That's really great. I think that is the key. I think the success here. West Virginians, we love our freedom. We love our we're the we want to live free. That's the truth of it. And one of the things that I think a lot of people, especially in a lot of the rural areas, they don't want to see overdevelopment of West Virginia. They want to still be able to maintain our culture here, our conservative values, those family values and things. To me, we have to progress and move forward with the future. But one way that we can do that and still maintain our identity as West Virginians and our culture here is by creating a pipeline, if you will, of people to move into the high-tech field that are from the state. So you're not necessarily bringing in people, coming into the state from outside of it that are, completely foreign to, the culture. Even though I'm a transplant, to West Virginia. I came originally, via California. I was born and raised there. I was kind of an anomaly there as a staunch conservative president of the Young Republicans Club and all of that growing up. But I joined the military. They moved me all over the place. And when we settled and we were in Maryland, I didn't fit in Maryland because I was much more conservative than the state, was politically. And so I looked around and I'm like, where can I move to where I can still be close enough to where my type of jobs are, which is the high tech jobs, mostly in DC and Northern Virginia, but I could have the freedoms. I love guns. Normally my wall would be racked full of them. I love hunting. I love, I've got, like I said, I'm a staunch, conservative. And so I wanted to live somewhere where I could have those values and share those values with my neighbors and friends, but still have access to the job market that I'm in. Right. And so that's why I chose to live in the Eastern Panhandle, which has been surprisingly, and to your point, everywhere in West Virginia seems to be shrinking in population, but the one area that is massively growing is the Eastern Panhandle because of its location in closeness to Northern Virginia and Maryland. But it doesn't need to be that way. We could create a pipeline for people that are, graduating high school, going to college, WVU, and where you're at, of course, right there, kind of in central northern West Virginia is really an ideal, location there. Because of the university.
And let me pick up on that. So, if we're trying to grow the base of the knowledge sector in West Virginia, one of the most important ingredients or one of the most important resources for that sector is the workforce. Mm-hmm. And we've already discussed the fact that the young educated talent in our state has been on exodus for the last 2 or 3 decades. I mean, we lost more population than any other state in the country, and we're down to 2 members of the House, as you well know. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a red flag of this loss, but that puts us in a bit of a hole. And as I mentioned earlier, that's a little bit of a handicap, because how do you hope to grow a knowledge sector if you don't have the key resource? And that's a real problem. So one of the strategies that we've been pursuing at the High Tech Foundation is to go into the Washington, D.C. area and try to find STEM-oriented federal operations that are important
Mm-hmm.
and that do a lot of contracting and try to get them to relocate to our community. And that's important for a couple of reasons. One, of course, the STEM related jobs, which is what we're trying to attract, and the contracting, if it's significant enough, it's going to make companies want to come to West Virginia because they want to bid on the work. They want to make money. It's a profit motive thing. And if it's strong enough, then those companies will help us solve the workforce deficiency because they want to make that money. Now, we call that approach, that strategy, our federal anchor model. And you hit on that because the fact that DC has been growing so much that it's now spread westward out towards Virginia, and our Eastern Panhandle is benefiting significantly from that. Now, I look at that as a couple of ways. First of all, yes, it's an example of how this federal anchor model helps with economic diversification. But it's also an issue, in my opinion. DC has been allowed to grow so big, and it's become so many federal operations are over there that two things have happened. Number one, it's become the most expensive place in the country to spend taxpayer money. Two, it's become a target-rich environment for our enemies. And this is really worrisome to me. It's incredibly worrisome to me. And so when President Trump announced that one of his major priorities was to remove federal operations out of DC, I just really was excited to hear him say that, because not only is it important for national security and a more efficient spending of taxpayer money, but West Virginia is ideally suited, especially where we are right in north central West Virginia, is ideally suited to house these operations. So I've been encouraging our delegation and the new governor to really embrace that with the president and let him know that we are ready and willing and able, and we will maximize the results of that if he can work with us to bring these operations in. Again, because if we strategically pick them so that they're STEM and so that they do a lot of contracting, that will in effect build that business case that we need for better economic diversification.
Yeah, definitely. And for those that may not understand that term STEM, because there's a lot of people that, maybe you're not into our field of work. STEM means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So it's those high-tech type jobs. And this is a growing field, and it is very fastly advancing. And in fact, my background, of course, has been primarily in cybersecurity. 27 years I've worked in that field, and it has allowed me to be able to, provide for my family. My wife was able to be a stay-at-home mom because these are technically, usually high-paying jobs. And I mean, this is the kind of thing that we need to see, and especially because you want that diversity of, economy. Speaking of which, I want to ask you about that. So some of your clients that have come to the park, NOAA, their presence at the park with facilities like the ESCC and ECOC has positioned West Virginia in the national cybersecurity sector.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the future of technology jobs in West Virginia? And by the way, after the show, I want you to hang on and stay on after the show, because I want to talk to you, on some more personal issues related to that. But what do you see as the future of technology jobs in West Virginia as it relates to, say, NOAA, and what other things, are being thought about or talked about right now that you can talk about? Obviously, there may be, things that you can't talk about that are going on, but what is the future that you see and that you envision?
Well, several years ago, we were able to convince NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, to relocate their entire cybersecurity headquarters operation out of DC into Fairmont. So now there's several hundred people, cybersecurity professionals like you, Nate, that are working there 24/7, 365 to try to secure the agency's infrastructure. That's been a real win for us. Not only has it had a bunch of people, but the support contract, which gets rebid for that every few years, it's currently held by a company called Leidos, is over $100 million. So going back to our federal anchor model, that kind of activity helps make us attractive to the sector. But in a bigger picture, and you mentioned the NOAA's Environmental Security Computing Center, that is one of the most advanced supercomputing centers in the country. And it currently holds, or houses, I should say, 3 supercomputers that are in the top 50 in the world. And we got that supercomputing center back in 2010 when NOAA had put out an RFP to build this center somewhere in the country, and they had said, look, we want to build this, but we have some concerns about the reliability of the grid in Northern Virginia. It's really congested there, so we kind of want to be out from this grid in a different location, but we don't want to have to travel clear across the country to go to the site. So when they put that bid out, we went after it very aggressively. And after a lengthy competition, we actually were awarded the contract to build that in Fairmont. Now that center takes most of the country's climate and weather data and processes it, because when this data is collected from satellites and other sources, it has to be configured into a more usable forms, and that requires supercomputing capacity. Plus, a lot of the new satellites that have been launched collect so much more of the data that if you don't have supercomputers, you can't do it. So we support and house that supercomputing center, and I'm really excited because NOAA is investing a lot of money over the next couple of years to basically double, maybe triple the capacity of that center. And back in September of 2024, the agency announced a new supercomputer that it was bringing to West Virginia, to the park. The system's called RIA. It's a super advanced computing system. I mean, the computer itself costs $100 million, Nate. So it's a big item. Wow. But it's going to support the agency's primary artificial intelligence-based models of climate and weather. It's going to be in West Virginia. That's going to position us to be one of the most advanced locations in the United States for that kind of work. And I don't have to tell you, and probably your listeners, that AI is very big right now.
Oh yeah, that's so
huge. There's going to be significant activity around that. Now, in addition to the supercomputing center, we were able to get the ground station command center for NOAA's #1 satellite program called GOES-R. And these are geosynchronous satellites that sit over the United States, collect all this data for this hemisphere of the planet, comes down to Fairmont, gets processed in our supercomputing center, then gets distributed for a variety of purposes. We also were able to get the ground station for all of their joint polar satellites, which are satellites that orbit from pole to pole. And then just a couple of years ago, we won the contract for the new space weather ground station. And we actually just finished that antenna. So we are the only location in the United States of America that has that magnitude of climate and weather data collection combined with the supercomputing resource. Now that's significant because this is such a big topic. I mean, this is an issue that's affecting governments, but it's also really affecting industry. Most people don't know this, but there exists in the United States over a $7 billion commercial climate and weather industry. And the main resource for that sector is the data collected and processed in Fairmont. Now, companies like major food chains, shipping companies, everybody's looking for better analysis so that they can adapt to whatever the climate's doing. Right. And not only adapt to it, but maybe make the most out of it. I mean, for example, the shipping industry, if there's going to be ice melting above Canada, then that's going to save them money. They don't have to go through the Panama Canal, for example. So they're really interested in that. And so there's a demand growing for more and more knowledge. The U.S. Department of Commerce studied that a few years ago and estimated that if the data that NOAA has can be made more accessible, then that market could double, maybe triple. So we've been working really aggressively with Microsoft, Azure, and AWS, the Amazon Web Services, to figure out how they could bring their cloud service operations to Fairmont, plug into this data, and allow access to their cloud platforms. Now, as we're working on that, we're also working with WVU and Fairmont State and Marshall to get their students aware of this.
Wow, yeah.
Because
that's huge.
Because if we can plant seeds of innovation around this in the most fertile ground we have in the state of potential entrepreneurs, and that's the student-body populations of these institutions, then we could drive the growth of this multi-billion-dollar sector, and maybe even become the epicenter of that growth. And that if we could do that and bite off a big piece of that market share, it could be transformational. It could accelerate us to where we want to go in terms of economic diversification, but it also could provide a whole bunch of new jobs for not only the kids, graduating college, but existing people in the state who can do a lateral shift, take a few data science courses, for example. So we're being very aggressive about that. And again, it's hard for anybody. I don't think anybody can compete with us because the cost to duplicate what we have right now and no one can take away is astronomical and almost impossible. So we have an opportunity to capitalize on this. And if you throw in the growing AI piece, I'm just so thrilled about it. And
people have no idea that AI, look, there's a lot of people afraid of it, and certainly there are challenges and there are concerns about the development of AI. But the reality is we have got to develop AI in order to keep up with everybody else in the world that we're competing with. And if we don't, we will be the ones to lose out. AI is going to be the difference between whether a country is able to advance or not, because of the advantage. And I like thinking of AI as not artificial intelligence, but as augmented intelligence, because what it's doing is it is augmenting our ability to rapidly process data and be able to do things that we weren't capable of even doing before. One thing I'm really curious about is with the development of Space Force and the space technology kind of focus of NOAA and all of that, is there a natural place for some of the defense industry to maybe move into West Virginia as well, as it relates to Space Force?
That's very prescient of you, Nate. As a matter of fact, so let me back up for a second. So NOAA is part of the U.S. Commerce Department. And the U.S. Commerce Department has been given the authority to oversee all future space commerce. Now, as part of that responsibility, they have assigned NOAA to build the next generation air traffic control system for space.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to it's called TRACS. Your listeners and viewers can look it up. It's TRACSS. And they're building this system, and it's going to be based in large part on the existing technology within the Air Force and Space Force, where they already, Nate, track anything bigger than 4 inches orbiting the planet. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So this system will be in part built on that. And I'm hoping, we're really close to this, I'm hoping that the backup part of that will be in Fairmont. And as a result of that possibility, there has been a lot of Air Force and Space Force activity in Fairmont talking about this. So you're absolutely right. Not just the defense part of it, but I think the potential of us playing a role in the commerce side is really, the potential is huge. And so we just, we have to continue to pursue that. I'm discussing that at length with our congressional delegation and Governor Morrissey, and, asking for them to help me engage with the Trump administration and say, help us capitalize on this opportunity. It's for all the reasons we've been talking about not being in DC, but also, Appalachia, they've been trying to correct Appalachia's economy for 75 years at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this could be the final opportunity. President Trump is in a position where he could be the champion of this. And I hope that comes to pass.
I think you're onto something. And, you know, being in my line of work for as long as I have, there's trends that you can see, and you kind of like, you get to the point where you begin to see things way ahead of time, because it becomes, you know, essentially instinct, you know, and one of the things that I recognized a long time ago is that sometimes it's the places that are the most backwards or the most unadvanced in technology that all of a sudden leapfrog everybody else, because they didn't have the infrastructure when it was old infrastructure. And as new infrastructure starts getting put in place, they all of a sudden now have the best high-speed internet, the best of everything. A perfect example is Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe was basically under the communist, you know, cloud for so long. And when Russia fell, investors and entrepreneurs saw Eastern Europe as an opportunity zone, and they basically went in and built up a massive IT infrastructure. And now some of the fastest internet speeds, some of the best IT infrastructure in the world is in countries that you never would think, you know, it's at. I see West Virginia as like a model for that. We have the potential here.
I think you're spot on. And I think, you know, just with what I'm dealing with now. So we're expanding these satellite ground stations to be cloud-based. There's a potential that, you know, I may be able to convince Microsoft, Amazon, others to come to the park. The supercomputing center, but the supercomputer I mentioned earlier, RIA. And by the way, your listeners can Google that and read about it. You know, AI takes a lot of power.
Yeah.
And this is going to be the first of what will likely be several supercomputing systems supporting AI. I'm very concerned that in West Virginia right now, with the existing grid, that we're going to max that out sooner rather than later.
Oh, yeah.
And if we do that without a plan for additional power, we're going to lose out. And I cannot, you know, I can't even let myself entertain that thought. So what I'm hoping is, and I'm really hoping for this, is that somehow, some way, the West Virginia legislature figures out a way to allow, for example, a natural gas power plant to be built right there in north central West Virginia that plugs directly into the gas we have in the shell formations, and is scalable so that we can provide whatever power needs to be provided. And, you know, if you think about it, what other locations in the country has the ability to do that besides West Virginia? Not many.
I don't think anywhere. I mean, honestly, I think what we have here, because we have the capability of developing these power plants, or mini power plants even, or private power plants, that where there's nobody else using that power. And so it's not like we're competing, you know, for use. We could focus it specifically for these industries. And I want to get into that in detail. But before we do, I need to cut to a commercial break very quickly here. And when we come back, we're going to talk about just that, because that's one of the things that I'm excited about, something that I campaigned on. And, you know, even though I didn't win my election, that's okay. In some ways, I think there's more I can do, not as a politician, but I've made a lot of really great connections. And I want to talk about that specifically when I come back from the break. So we'll be right back after a short message, and we're going to dig directly into that topic specifically.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. The game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped, and most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest. But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto, fine art, real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money. The kind kings and queens fought for and large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above-average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only, and right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
Welcome back to the Mountain edition of the Raising Cain Show, where I've been talking with Jim Estep, the visionary president and CEO of the High Technology Foundation. We've been talking about some of the exciting things that are going on in where you would not necessarily expect high tech to be a thing, but it is becoming a thing very rapidly here, largely due to the hard work and effort of people like Jim. So before we get back into our conversation, I want to quickly remind people where they can find the two great products that we were talking about in this last commercial. So the first thing that you saw there was a documentary by a good friend of mine, country singer, and Glenn Baker. He's somebody who has just gone through really the ringer and saw himself locked up and in jail when he hadn't committed a crime without access to a lawyer for 70-something days. It was just absolutely crazy. And so he decided to make a documentary on this and talk about, some of the problems that are going on in America. He was a U.S. military veteran, and I had him on my show. And after the show, we talked, as I was actually having him on about a music video that he'd done. But I told him my story as a federal whistleblower, and he couldn't believe what had happened to me. And so he said, "Hey, would you be willing to be in my documentary?" And so it is a documentary where I tell my story as well. And there are several other really great patriots, veterans that share their stories, but it's not a negative documentary. There's a lot of humor mixed in with it, and there's a hopeful message at the end of it. And the best thing about this documentary is that 50% of the proceeds for this documentary are going to go to help a veteran who's lost his ability to walk be able to walk again, because we're going to donate 50% of the proceeds to help put him in an exoskeleton. So pretty exciting thing. And you can find out more about that by going to finishthisfight.com/Cain. Also, 7kmetals.com. Look, there's a lot of great gold and silver companies that are out there. What's unique about 7K Metals, and this is a company that I actually started, collecting through them. And then I talked to them and said, "Hey, can I talk about this on my show?" And so I worked out an affiliate agreement with them. But you can find out more about this and check it out and go on their site and read about it. What's interesting and unique about them is they focus on the little guy. They're not focused on, the filthy rich and the elite. They're focused on average people and helping them to be able to get into the collection of gold and silver as a hedge against the US dollar dropping in value. And they have some really great programs, and they have things that you can set up. So even you just, $150 a month, and you can get, regular coins coming to your house and regular bullion coming to your house. And it's a great program. So you can check that out by going to 7kmetals/Raising Cain. That's scrolling along the bottom, so I don't need to remind you again, but check it out at your own pace. And if it's something you're interested in, and you can sign up for it. So Jim, before we went to break, we were starting to get into a topic that gets me really excited. One of the things that I learned about West Virginia as I began traveling across the state and talking to people all over was just how much energy resources we have in the state that are literally untapped. We have massive amounts of coal. We have massive amounts of natural gas. And there's no reason that we shouldn't be shipping all, right now, like I think we send out, I think it's $7 billion in exports around the world. And a lot of that is coal, and natural gas. And the truth is that we could take that and refine it here, build a power plant here, make the power plants. But the issue, and when I was talking to people, the issue that kept coming up, why aren't we building more power plants and then exporting that power? Because you got to deal with things like the government, the federal government, to get, pipelines and permits. And we've seen some of these problems that we've had to deal with here in the state. Even when you hook up to the national power grid, there's all these permitting requirements that the federal government has. But when you build a private power plant, the federal government has no say in it. In fact, due to Chevron deference and the rulings recently, by the Supreme Court, they can't stop us from doing whatever we want to do in our state. It's only really when you have that interstate commerce that it becomes an issue. So we are poised right now in West Virginia, in my opinion, to start building a vision for how we can build private power plants that power these technology centers, these data centers, these AI, farms. And another thing too that I found out about, which I was really surprised, was cryptocurrency market, which is just, it's not going to shrink. It's only growing.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of power in order to mine cryptocurrency, which is one of the ways that cryptocurrency, it grows, is through this process called mining, which basically it's breaking, cryptological codes in order to be able to, create more crypto, but it requires a lot of power, and it's extremely power intensive. We have everything we need right here in West Virginia to do this. We just need to draw in the right investment, and then, as you were talking about early, build the workforce that's necessary to operate, these types of environments. And we could very quickly, I think, become the technology capital of the United States. I really do believe that.
Well, and you're spot on, because we've been hitting on talking about AI, and as you said, AI is going to pretty much transform every industry, every economy we have. Now, right now, we have the kernel of what could be a big vertical portion of the AI industry with what NOAA is doing around climate weather. Now, there are so many potential spin-offs from that it's in the billions, as I mentioned. Now, right now, to accommodate that growth, I here in North Central West Virginia, I go to Mon Power, who's a great partner, by the way. I really love working with them. But they're constrained by, first of all, many of the things that you mentioned, but also the regional grid. It's called PJM. They're also constrained by the state rules associated with the Public Service Commission and things like that. So in my case, if I go to them and they say, well, Jim, it'll take us 10 years to get you what you need. And of course, that ain't going to work for me. So what is my option? Well, my option is that as long as I stay behind the meter, as they say, I could build my own natural gas power plant and plug directly into gas wells that are either in, western Marion County or western Mon County, and have a virtually unending supply of natural gas to power that generators.
Yeah.
That requires me to go build that, and that's not my expertise. So I'd have to partner with somebody to help me figure that out. That's where it gets a little more complicated, but that could be done.
Yeah.
Now, let's say that I figured out how to do that. What about the enormous demand across the country for more data centers that can be used to process AI or process data with AI? That demand is going through the roof. And they're talking about opening up federal lands for data centers, but everybody's saying, well, that's great, but where's the power going to come from?
That's right.
And then if you look at Northern Virginia, which is the data center capital of the planet, they're in trouble over there. You go to Loudoun County, you go to Fairfax County, they're in trouble because they've approved all these data centers without really thinking through the plan of how are we going to do this. So standing before us as a state is an opportunity for us to capture not just the $1 billion opportunity associated with commercial climate and weather, but the $1 trillion opportunity associated with AI.
Yeah.
If we figure out a way to energize and unleash the power of our natural gas to create electricity. So what has to happen? Well, the West Virginia legislature, I think, needs to really jump on this and make it the highest priority they can to figure out how to enable, for example, in my case, some kind of natural gas power generation capability to be built there that can not only support what we're building, but attract all these AI data centers from around the planet that are looking for a location. And, you know, I talk with Microsoft frequently and all these other folks. Microsoft is spending billions to reactivate 3 Mile Island, and it's really out of desperation.
Yeah.
They're looking at micro reactors. Just in 2025 alone, Microsoft will spend $80 billion on data centers. So we could tap that market tomorrow if we announce that we've come up with a plan to build a natural gas power plant that can scale up to, 10 gigawatts if need be, and be fed from all of the natural gas. If we can do that, it could be huge. And we have to make it a priority today, and it has to be part of the upcoming legislative session.
Yeah, we have right now, we got a window of opportunity with Trump as president.
Yeah.
Trump has made it very clear, drill, baby, drill.
Yep.
He wants to see us, develop complete energy independence again. And we have this opportunity right now sitting in front of us. We only need to reach out and grab hold of it, and we could completely change the course of West Virginia for future generations, going on in the future. I'm really excited about it. I think this is something that needs to be a focus of our state legislature. Like I said, after the show, I want to talk to you about some ideas on that.
Okay.
I've made a lot of great contacts. I want to be an advocate for this issue. I'm passionate about it, just like you are about wanting to see our state, really become a major player in this. And I think it has technology jobs. To me, they're one of the types of jobs that have the ability to bring people out of poverty, faster than anything else. I mean, it's unbelievable. I was blessed when I went in the Army to go into a field that I had no idea. I mean, I had suspicions that cybersecurity was going to become an important thing, but not to the degree that it has. I mean, I had no idea, and I certainly had no idea about the income potential for these types of jobs. But, I've had in my career, I've made as much as a surgeon, somebody that goes to school for 10 years. And in my case, I didn't even have a college degree. I got my training through the military. I got my clearance, and then I ended up working and getting my certifications. And it has been just an incredible career field. And, and it's not for everybody. Some people, that's not their cup of tea. For me, it was great because I've always been somewhat accident prone. so swinging a hammer was never going to work out well for me. I don't think my life, expectancy was going to last very long in those types of work. Working in a coal mine, I've got a history of family members that, my great grandfather died in a coal mine. I don't want to be the next one, right?
Right. Yeah.
He was in a coal mine that collapsed up in Fayette County, Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
So, the beauty of this type of work is it's given me a great career that has, like I said, it's helped me to do well financially, and it's helped, me to be able to be there for my, my family. The last 3 years has just been incredible because with my job and the current contract that I'm on, I've been able to work remotely, doing my job, and occasionally I go in to work on some of the classified systems, but most of the time I'm working from my home office, and that, again, that's not for everybody, but for me it's been great because it means I've been able to spend more time with my family, when in the past I had to commute down to DC, and that was like 4 hours on the road. So we have an opportunity to do something here. I'm really excited about it, and I think the window of opportunity it's a small one because Trump's got 4 years in office.
Yeah.
We need to capitalize on this as best we can to get the support to develop, these types of things, to do more, energy exploration and building, I think of, and really expanding the private sector, power plants and things like that. One of the advantages of that is that no matter what happens in future administrations is that we will control that in our own state.
Yes.
One thing I want to ask you about, it's great. We got good government contract stuff work going on. We've got some big companies that have come into the state. How do we make things better for small businesses to be able to be successful in West Virginia? I don't know if you saw recently, but there's a big row that has erupted in the social media world with Tim Pool pretty upset. He moved his whole operation here to West Virginia, and he's got one of the most successful podcasting shows. And he recently went on a rant about regulatory stuff here in West Virginia, the taxes that he's having to pay, the fact that they don't allow for, if you're hiring people from West Virginia to be able to hire them as independent contractors. And there's all of these issues surrounding that. How do we work towards building an environment that is small business friendly so that we can get more people like myself? I have my own small business here, but I haven't really been able to expand it because of a lot of these regulatory problems here in West Virginia. How do we change that? What are some of the things that you see from a technology standpoint in order to be able to get more entrepreneurs, get more investors in West Virginia, and to develop? What are the things that you see are the priorities?
Well, I can tell you, as someone who's been in the community for a long time, it has improved immensely over the last decade or so. And, the legislature has done some amazing things to get us in a better place. People like Secretary of State Mac Warner implemented just some great programs to help with that. And I know that his brother, the new Secretary of State, Chris Warner, is going to do the same thing. And I think Patrick Morrissey's got some great ideas. So I'm really optimistic about that for West Virginia. I know that some issues, for example, like independent contractors, that goes all the way up to the U.S. Department of Labor. And I think our congressional delegation will have to be involved in trying to affect that policy. Now, in our environment, our federal anchor model environment, one of the things that has always been a real positive in terms of the government contracting is that almost every contract that goes out has a huge requirement for small business participation. And what we have found is that requirement has been a real catalyst for not only helping small businesses get in the mix, but also entrepreneurs to start up. So that's been a real positive for us. And so I think that's helpful. And, here's the thing. When we're talking about recruiting federal operations to the state to help build our model, that's really not novel. In fact, West Virginia, if you compare us to just the states around us, and you say, okay, how much money is going through their federal anchors? If you look at Virginia, it's like 15 billion. You look at Maryland, it's like 7 or 8 billion. You look at Pennsylvania, it's like 6 billion. Ohio, 4 or 5 billion. Even Kentucky's 3 or 4 billion. West Virginia, maybe $1 billion. So in terms of our approach using federal operations to boost the economy, we're just trying to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
But what people don't also understand is if you go all the way back to Silicon Valley and you peel back the layers and say, well, what made Silicon Valley what it is? You'll see that it all started in the 50s with the enormous spending around the Minuteman missile program,
Yeah, you're
and
right.
the spending around the mission to the moon and space. Enormous amounts of money went into that. Massive calculations needed to be done, which drove the invention of the calculators. The calculators drew these elementary computational devices, and then eventually circuits and so forth and so on. So what we are doing in West Virginia, our approach is not really novel. We're just trying to catch up and duplicate. And if you look at what happened in Silicon Valley and in Northern Virginia, for that matter, it really created a nice ecosystem for small business growth, entrepreneurial growth, innovation growth. And I see the same thing starting to take root for us. It's just very early and still really starting to go. But if you look at what we're trying to do by seeding these opportunities around climate, weather, and all the colleges, we're hoping to have that kind of growth. And in that context, to your point, we need to make sure that the regulatory environment is conducive to that. Mm-hmm. And again, as I said before, I'm very optimistic about that. And under the Trump administration and with our delegation, I'm optimistic that whatever federal level, whether that's Department of Labor, I think there's a real chance we're going to get it right.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that we have the opportunity, to capitalize right now on, like you had mentioned, Trump's initiative to move these federal agencies out of Washington, D.C. With those federal agencies come contractor jobs, and which has been the bulk of most of I've worked probably about 50% of my career has been as a government employee, but then the other 50% has been as a contractor. And and people a lot of people don't understand that the contracting industry, yeah, sure, you got to recompete and all of that, and but the job stability is actually quite high. Oftentimes, even if a new contractor wins a contract, the new company, as long as you are making the government happy with the work that you're doing, the next company brings you on. I mean, it has been very stable work for me.
Absolutely.
And so I think there's a lot of opportunities there for people in West Virginia. Obviously, expansion of our energy industry and maybe even refining those capabilities. We've had some problems with losing our steel industry, but the steel industry is heavily dependent on power. And, and again, I think Trump sees our ability to produce steel as being critically important to national security. So I think there's an opportunity to revitalize that here in West Virginia, so long as we can provide the power necessary. And the same thing with chemical production. Chemical plants require a lot of power. You've got, just there's so many sectors. Manufacturing requires a ton of power.
Everybody.
So it's kind of one of those scenarios. If you build it, they will come. And if we were to focus, I think, get our state legislature on board and our governor on board with focusing a massive building of infrastructure and power, related infrastructure, so that we can actually entice these companies to come to West Virginia. Imagine, so if something's part of the grid, you're basically stuck with the federal government dictating how you do things. But when something's not part of the grid, if you have a private power plant, say, like you said, that's got, direct pipelines running into it, that an unlimited supply, and, you're not having to pipe it, down to Texas.
Yeah. You're not worried about the reliability of the bigger
That's
grids.
right. You actually have the opportunity to, basically severely reduce the cost of electricity.
Yep.
And if you had that capability and the state were involved in helping to make that possible by making those investments in that infrastructure, we could actually do some public-private partnerships with the state, with these, companies, these oil and gas companies, the coal industry, and produce these private power plants that then we say, hey, you move your business here and we will guarantee you, your gas or your electricity, I should say, at a reduced rate compared to any other state. We will cut your electric rate down in half.
Even if it's not at a reduced rate, if you can ensure reliability and scalability, that's all you need.
That's true. You're right. We will guarantee that if you need more power, we will build another power plant.
Or just add another generator to our plant.
That's right.
And plug another pipeline into it.
It is that simple. It really is. I mean, look, folks, we've got such an opportunity here. And so I hope that somebody on Trump's team sees this interview right now, because I think this is one of the most important areas in the country for energy development. And I know Trump knows that. I know it. So if we could just capitalize on that, and that's the other thing too. Green energy ain't going to do it. Never going to cut it. We're never going to meet the power needs from solar and wind power. Not possible. And anybody that knows anything knows that.
Listen, I don't have anything against renewables. I love renewables, but they just aren't ready and probably won't be anytime soon. So natural gas, at least, is a good alternative.
The only thing I have against them is I don't like the when you see the beautiful mountainscape and you got all these windmills, it just messes it up. I
can't argue with that.
I love the beauty of our mountainscapes without all of those windmills. But if we could generate enough power, and we have the capability of doing that, if we can get the help, through some of our state legislators, and I think right now, like I said, I think there's an opportunity here, with Trump in power and the Republicans in control, to actually even get some assistance from the federal government to help bring us up to scale with the infrastructure needed, so that we can also help produce that electricity for other states, like Virginia, Northern Virginia. They need power. They got all these data centers there. Why aren't we making it here and then
desperately need it? They desperately need it.
So exciting times, really exciting times. Many people. One of the things too that there's been a lot of interesting developments is in the coal industry. They've been a lot of really interesting technology to develop clean burning coal, and in particular where they can take coal and they can turn it into through gasification, turn it into hydrogen, which burns totally clean. There's so many opportunities right here. Now, where you're at, obviously, the north central West Virginia is kind of a key location. What are some other locations within West Virginia that you see as potential for, development of technology centers?
Well, as you pointed out, our Eastern Panhandle is already kind of moving in that direction. Mm-hmm. And I think that even though the southern part of our state is, economically depressed, if they were to figure out a way to build this kind of power capacity that we're talking about in a way that made it available and scalable and reliable, which it would be, then for all the reasons we've been talking about, you're going to have a variety of industries take interest. Now, there's a lot of other pieces that have to go into that, but that one linchpin, I think there could be potential, especially with the data center. And I know there's been talk of data center capabilities in the southern part of the state. So, I'm hoping that the work we're doing to try to bring in a big piece of the commercial climate and weather industry into our community is significant enough that we can spread that wealth throughout the whole state.
Yeah, and it brings the jobs in for not just tech, because you got to bring in the contracting, the contractors to build the environments. You got to bring in the HVAC guys. Incredible amounts of HVAC is required for all of those data centers. You have to have, the support businesses for all the employees that are working there. The mom and pop, restaurants and everything else. I mean, it really does. And all you got to do to see that is, go up to the northern panhandle today where the steel industry used to be.
Yes.
And you can see how it has depressed the economy when that industry was gone. And you can see what has happened up there. That's where it's so important to have these industries come in, because it creates jobs all the way around, everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, there's
So
always an ecosystem that
there
blossoms
is.
around these core opportunities. So there, if and you can leave it to chance and say let it evolve, or you can try to be proactive
Mhm.
and nurture it. But
Yeah.
you got to
And
have some of
while
these anchor pieces like power.
That's right. And while technology changes, and you may have a niche within technology that's there for a little bit, and then it goes away, and new technology comes in and takes its place. The one thing they all need is power. All of them need power,
The
and
other thing
West
to
Virginia is
consider,
poised to solve that.
absolutely, and that power attracts data centers, data, and every business, I don't care what sector you're in nowadays, is becoming data centric.
Yeah,
Every company's using its data to be more competitive, to be more efficient. And what
yeah,
I'm seeing is a whole plethora of new occupations around data, data analytics, data sciences, so forth. So, if we can do this right with the power and
mhm,
everything, then we can create such a demand for data related occupations in West Virginia that, you know, it's cliche, but yesterday's coal miners are tomorrow's data miners. And that could be very exciting for this state.
yeah. That's very. That sounds like a great campaign slogan. That sounds like that is something that I do think that yeah, I mean, obviously there needs to be we need cooperation and help, within the state legislature to support a campaign really to push for these things, to push for, because it's not just about the power. We obviously need that, and that unfortunately we do need the government's help with that, because you're talking about infrastructure and in very high dollar investments and those types of things. But the other thing that we need is we need education, and education
Yeah.
has got to shift in West Virginia. Tell me about what you've been. I know you're very involved in that area of helping to work with the universities, vocational schools, and things like that to get these high tech training and that sort of thing
Yeah.
into our education system. What have you seen in that area in terms of like the areas where we're seeing promise, and also what are the challenges?
Well, it's always been my experience that the kids coming out of our school systems in West Virginia, I mean, when I can, we have people that come in from other parts of the country to work. And I mean, our folks are as competitive as anybody. And that's my personal experience.
Hmm.
And our colleges and universities are producing good talent. The problem is that these kids graduate and yes, they're looking for a job, but they're looking for a career. So when they look at the West Virginia landscape, sometimes they're like, well, can I really pursue a career? Yeah, you've got some stuff growing. It's great. And so it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg thing. I
Hmm.
think that I'm not really seeing a lot of flaws in the products coming out of the West Virginia's education system, to be honest with you. I just think it's a matter of us getting to that level of maturity in terms of job availability to where we can demonstrate to these kids that, yes, you can pursue a meaningful career here. And
Hmm.
so it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem for both sides.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get there. It's just a matter of once we finally hit that horizon, and then it's the sky's the limit.
And we
Um,
are getting there slowly but surely.
yeah.
We are getting there.
Definitely. I'm hearing it more and more. Talking to some of my friends actually out there in Mon County. A buddy of mine's son just graduated and got his degree in cybersecurity,
Oh,
and now he's moving into that industry, and he is staying here in West Virginia. Um, One of the other issues that I know has been a big problem, and unfortunately, there's no simple solution because of our landscape, is the high speed internet lines, fiber optic lines and things like that are required to move that data from one place to another.
yep.
Now, with the advent of Elon Musk's Starlink
Like,
systems and all of that, that's been a game changer. I mean, like, I moved into
I
my
agree.
house, I did not know to even think about asking about internet because I just assumed there
Yep.
was high speed internet everywhere. I moved here from Maryland, and before that, I lived in Hawaii. Before that, I was in Japan, and then in California. So, I mean, everywhere I've lived up until moving here, there was no question about high speed internet. It was guaranteed I was going to be able to find it.
Yep.
Moved here, I bought a very expensive house in a nice beautiful neighborhood that I would have just automatically assumed had internet,
Right.
and there was none. The only thing that we had, it was like going back in time, because they had 4G LTE, which half the time didn't work. And there was no Verizon here, no. I think you could get like, oh gosh, what the heck was it? IDSN, but you had to pay for like
ISDN, yeah.
or ISDN, sorry, ISDN. You had to pay for, having it put in, and it was like going to be expensive. And I'm just like,
Yep.
and it wasn't even fast. And I'm just thinking to myself, it reminded me of the days back, the 9800 baud, internet dial-up. It's like, I was just like, I felt like I went back in time, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on a minute. I got duped. I forgot to ask about, but then Starlink came about. So for a while there, I was heavily dependent on, 4G LTE, and I kept running out. They would throttle me after so many,
Right.
so much, data that I was using, and I was using a lot for my job. Well, Starlink came, and now I don't have any problems at all. I mean, it's like, doesn't matter. I got mountains all around me. I got it on the top of my roof, and and it's beaming down, and I'm getting great download speeds. Has there been any talk about getting Elon Musk to look at investing in West Virginia and looking at this place as a focus? Because what he's selling, he would be like, he would own the state in terms of like, just, I mean, like, there's no other options in many places. Yeah, certainly in some of the cities, you've got some options, but where a lot of the rural areas, like even, areas where you have people that, when they're looking to move and they want to live and work near a site, we need better internet. That's one of the things that we need in this state. And so to me, rather than trying to, go and use old technology we already have problems with, because if you got to go up and over a mountain, that's more cable. That's more places that cable can break. There's all of these problems that are associated with that. But if you're shooting it up into space, then really the only issue you have is, do you have your pole high enough so that you don't have obstructions? And that's it. And to me, this is like the perfect place, to kind of showcase that and get Elon Musk to make a major investment here, in West Virginia.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the Starlink is an example of the solution. West Virginia, because it's, first of all, we have a very small population, but it's really spread out. So when any company comes in and says, we got to make a capital investment, we got to go up and down these mountains, they're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's kept us way behind. And I know Senator Capito has been a strong advocate for this. She's helped get billions set aside for broadband, and investments are being made, but it's for me personally, it's too slow.
It is. And unfortunately, like even Congress, they put aside all this money for, for basically, that was there for the taking of any telecommunications company that was willing to put in, broadband into rural areas.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, Verizon out here where I live, I've got a neighbor who built a $3 million home, believe it or not, right up the street from me. Beautiful home. And he was in the same, kind of situation I was. He wanted internet at his home. He's got a couple different businesses, and he reached out to Verizon. They said, well, if you want us to run fiber optic, it's going to cost you $35,000 for us to run it out there. And he was willing to pay it. He said, he reached out to his neighbors, said, hey, is anybody willing to, to chip in for this? And there wasn't a whole lot, to be honest with you, because Starlink had just kind of come out, although you had to be on a waiting list to get it. And he didn't want to wait. So he's like, you know what? I'm just going to screw it. I'm just going to pay for it. So he said, all right, I'll pay the $35,000. Then they came out, did their assessment, said, we don't see enough, homes clustered together, because we all have, we've got some acreage in our properties out here. He goes, we don't see the viability for maintaining that. So we're not going to invest there. So even though he offered to pay for them to put it in, they wouldn't do it. And the fact is they could have had it paid for by the federal government, because we're considered a rural area. So it's crazy. The government can push all the money out there that they want, but it has to be economically viable for the company because they got to maintain all those lines.
Yeah.
And that's where I think Starlink and that type of technology is key. I know,
Yeah, I
though,
couldn't agree more. Yeah.
when I get online and I go do a check, right, to see, where, when I'm doing, I want to do like a speed test or something like that. It always is going to New York.
Mm.
So the uplink, is obviously from my house, but then, when it's going down, it's coming down into New York somewhere. I'm assuming they got some, big base station there or whatever.
But it's a hub of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should focus on asking him to build one of those, over by you.
Well, and as a matter of fact, so for our purposes, when we won the contract to build the supercomputing center, NOAA actually paid, I think the company was Zayo, to run all new fiber from Pittsburgh down to Fairmont, and then out from Fairmont out west somewhere. So, we had a couple hundred gigabits of speed into the park right off the bat.
Wow.
That was a really kind of a godsend, a good byproduct of winning the contract. Since that time, some other companies have actually ran fiber, one of which was DQE out of Pittsburgh. And they, on their own nickel, ran a bunch of fiber from Pittsburgh down to the park. And they now offer, I think it's 400 gigabit per second capabilities into the
jealous.
park. But why did they do that? Because they made that investment because they
see what's coming.
That's right. NOAA has a national network called NWave, and I think it's historically ran at like 100 gigabit per second, but I think they're ramping that up to somewhere like 364 gigabits or something like that. So these companies see what's happening and say, okay, we're going to make the capital investment because we want to build on that work. So we've been very fortunate to have outstanding broadband capacity, but also, we have 3 of the most advanced satellite ground stations on the planet in Fairmont. So we have a lot of strong satellite communications as well. Yeah. So bandwidth, telecommunications is, we're as competitive with anybody in the world in Fairmont. And so if we can get the power to go along with that, then we're going to be, we're really going to be poised.
Well, President Trump's aim to reduce regulatory burdens, I think is critically important, right? It's going to open up doors for us here in West Virginia. Absolutely. We've talked about power, obviously, is the big one. What other incentives or policy adjustments do you see that are important for West Virginia's legislature to implement in order to make it an attractive location for tech giants? I mentioned one of those things is the issue of the independent contractor. That's an important thing, especially for small businesses that don't want to have to pay what's it called, the Social Security taxes and all of that. And in our industry, it's very common. Like right now, I'm an independent contractor because I make more money. And then I have some decisions that I have, I can make on whether or not, and I can go back and forth. I've done W-2 and I've done independent. But what other challenges or changes do you see that the state legislature needs to move on in order to make things more attractive here for these big tech companies?
Well, it's interesting when I'm talking to a lot of these companies, big and small. These are companies coming from Northern Virginia, where they're paying enormous taxes, both, there's federal taxes, but the local taxes. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So we actually, even where we are today, have almost a competitive advantage in that regard. I mean, we could probably double the local taxes in Marion County, and they would think this isn't even still on our radar. So taxes hasn't been a big issue because of where these folks are coming from. Now and of course the state has done a good job over the last couple of years of reducing the personal income taxes.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're almost, we're so close. Honestly, if we could have other sources of revenue in our state, which I think we will, especially with the changes, I think in the next, probably by the end of this next session, we may be a no state income tax state.
And I think that'll be very helpful because, we have to face it. there still are some stereotype issues this state has wrestles with.
Sure.
And so when you're recruiting tech workers to West Virginia, if they're not from here, there's a little higher hurdles you have to get over.
I had to take back all those jokes I used to make about West Virginia when I became one.
Exactly. So anytime we can sweeten the pot, whether it's no income tax or, when you transfer your car, the cost of that be minimal. Any little thing like that they can do to sweeten the pot helps.
I got a funny story though to tell you about that. When I was campaigning, and I was coming up with my campaign logo and a motto or whatever for my materials and stuff I was putting out. Somebody early on down in Petersburg said to me, Nate, with the last name Cain, why aren't you using Raising Cain as like your logo? I'm like, I thought that would be kind of cheesy, And she goes, are you kidding me? We're hillbillies. We love that kind of thing. And I was like, all right. So I embraced it. Now my podcast show is called the Raising Cain Show. I mean, it's fun, and I enjoy it. But you're right. There is a stereotype that people have of West Virginia as being uneducated or backwards, or and it is not that way. In fact, what I have found is there is definitely an attitude of people want to maintain their freedom and their independence. We're kind of it's in our motto, mountaineers live free. We want to live free. We don't want, it's funny. I think for many years, especially, under the kind of, Democrat control and stuff like that, that we saw, in the state, especially, with the steel industry and the unions and all of that, there was we become heavily reliant upon government assistance. But even still, people always wanted to maintain their independence and be able to do, whatever they wanted to do. The challenge, is we got to be able to grow as a state. We have to be able to grow. We've got to be able to diversify. We need new industries. We need to be attractive, so that our kids will stay and they won't leave. And we need to attract people, but we can do that and attract the right people. I'm perfect, case example of that. I mean, I came here as a conservative, and I fit right in with West Virginia culture because I feel the same way that everybody's here. I came here for those reasons. And we could do the same thing and I kind of look at you look at what's going on in Florida right now. Florida has become kind of like the southeastern mecca for conservatives that have, left their states and have moved there, and their economy is booming and their population is booming, but, and it's becoming more and more red because of that. And so, you have more like-minded people and things like that. I see West Virginia as kind of has the opportunity to do the same thing for the Northeast, and we have the ability to be able to be that. And we should be trying to move in that direction. I think that, that we have, I think we've had some changes in our state legislature, and I think that are good. And I think that we've got some very pro-business senators. My senator who's out here, Tom Willis, is one of those. And so I definitely, if you don't know him, I would definitely want to introduce you to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to meet
because he's very pro-business, and I think he would be a good person to have, on board. And I know quite a few actually of of our state legislature that I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. And so I want to help you make those connections, because
I appreciate that.
I want to do as much as I can to help West Virginia move, into not just move into, the 21st century. I want to see us become the leader in technology in our country. And I think we absolutely have the ability to do that. I've got kids now that are adults, and my daughter, very, capable. I've trained her and interned her, in cybersecurity. And I want to see her have those opportunities, because I don't want to see her move away. I want to see her stay here. So, I think there are opportunities, and I think the sky's the limit, and it's pretty exciting. I always like to ask my guests, and we've been talking for a little over an hour and a half, or a little under an hour and a half. And I appreciate you giving me your time and being on the show and talking about these things. It's exciting for me. I spend a lot of time in political commentary for obvious reasons, but to be able to talk about technology, that's where my heart is. I mean, I love, that's why I got into this industry, and I like politics too, but this is like the perfect marriage of both, right?
Right. Yeah.
We've got a great opportunity right now politically and technologically to do some great things for the state, and I'm very excited. So I always like to ask my guests, if there's one thing that you want people who are watching right now, we've got over 1,000 people watching right now live. What is the one thing that you want them to take away from this conversation? Because obviously people have short attention spans, and so this is your opportunity. What do you want people to know about what we're doing, or how you want them to get involved? What is it that you want to say to them?
Well, I would say to them that to reach out to your local representatives, your delegates, your state senators, and the congressional delegation, and let them know just how important it is to continue to support this diversification. We're not talking about replacing any industry. We're talking about diversifying, adding another sector to keep our young folks home and to reverse that, what I call the hemorrhaging of our young talent. We need to reverse that. So reach out, let folks know that this is an important agenda item.
Amen. That's true. I agree with you on that. I think that's something we can all do. One thing that I want to say to folks is when I ran for Congress, I learned some very valuable things. One of those things that I learned is if you don't see what you want to see happening in the state legislature, pick up the phone, talk to these people. They're very approachable. It's not like your congressman, you call your congressman and, you'll get a kind of a form letter back, and, you might get a phone call, you might not get a phone call, but they've got 700,000 people to service. Yeah. Senators even more. But your state legislator, your state representative, your state senator, they're very approachable. They're very easy to get a hold of. And if they're not, then run against them, or support somebody else to run against them. But the most of them, I think, are very approachable. And if you come to them with ideas, not just complaints, but ideas on how to do things, or if you say, hey, this is very important to me, and you get your other friends to call them and say, hey, this is important to me, they're going to listen, and you're going to see change. People in West Virginia need to get more involved with their local politics. That's absolutely one of the things we didn't get into, but it's very important, is your counties. One of the challenges I know that, and it's all based on what county you live in, is, building permits and things like that. And the just ability to be able to move through the red tape. Some counties you can go to and easy peasy, you can, you pretty much can build anything you want, as long as it's not an environmental disaster, they're usually okay with it. And even sometimes on that on that note there, it doesn't matter. But other counties you can go to, and it's like, you got to pay a fee and get a permit, and it's going to take months just to build a deck on your home. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, and it's the same for businesses too. I talked to some business people out here when I was, doing my campaigning. So get involved with your county politics, get involved with your state legislators, let them know about the things that you are not happy with and the things that you want to see change. And if you have an idea, bring it forward to them. I can't tell you how many times I sat in somebody's office down in Charleston. I went down there and met with some of these guys, and I talked to them and I said, hey, have you guys thought about this? And that's a really great idea. And that they do listen, and you can actually sponsor in this state. You're allowed to sponsor legislation or write legislation, and you can find somebody to sponsor that for you in the state legislature. So if you're not seeing the bill you want, then write the bill you want and go find somebody to sponsor. And it's a very effective way of getting things done. So to your point, get involved, folks. We have the opportunity to change things for the better and make, great opportunities for our young people and for the future of West Virginians. And we can do it. We have everything right now poised right in front of us. It's just laying there. It's like my dad always used to say, it's like, when the 49ers and the Pioneers first went to California, and they came over the mountains and down into the valleys. It's said that when they walked in these valleys, gold nuggets were just like laying around on the ground. They didn't even have to dig it out of the ground. It was literally everywhere there was gold littered all along the rivers and the banks, and they were just going and picking it up. Then of course later, as everybody started flooding there, then they had to start, digging it and mining it. But, right now we are in that gold mine. We're in that moment where it's right in front of us, just waiting to be picked up. There's opportunities to benefit our state, to lift people out of poverty, to give people hope, to bring them. With all of these technological advances comes so much benefit to our state. You get better hospitals, you get better education, you get better, technology that makes life better for everyone. There's so many opportunities that are available, and it creates jobs in so many different ways. So it's a really good things, folks. And but it takes us getting involved and engaged and making sure that we're talking to, the people who are the ones that can make it happen. And I always, Jim, I always take a moment to say a prayer at the end of my show. I recognize that, we got to do our part, but, it can't hurt to ask for a little bit of help on high. So I'm going to take a moment to do that real quick. Heavenly Father, Lord, I just thank you so much for this conversation. I feel hopeful and excited, and I'm looking forward, God, to what you're going to do here in the state of West Virginia that I believe you called me to come to. And Lord, I know that the future of West Virginia is a great one. I pray, Lord, that you would raise up the right leadership, and for the leaders that are here, Lord, that you would help them to see the potential and to grab hold of it. And I pray, Lord, that you would bring the jobs to West Virginia that are going to help the future generations of young people and to be able to stay here in the state and to grow the state from within, and also attract good people, Lord, from outside of the state. Maybe even bring some of those people back that have left. Lord, we just pray that your blessing be upon it, that you would guide our leadership with wisdom and with integrity. We pray, Lord, that you would bless Jim and the things that he's doing, that you would help him to be successful in growing this important industry here in West Virginia. And I thank you for the work that you've done through him. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So, Jim, before we go, where can people follow you? Are you on social media? And what's your website for what you're doing and all of that?
Well, on Twitter, it's at James L. Estep. Our website is www.wvhtf.org, and all of our social media links are there on that site.
Perfect. That's great. Folks, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. If you like this sort of content, make sure you comment to me and let me know. I'm trying to mix things up and add more of this sort of thing. I think this is important. People need to know about what we're doing here in West Virginia, and that's one of the reasons I started this once a week show just on West Virginia. For those of you that are watching that aren't from West Virginia, hey, think about moving here. And if you want to stay where you're at, that's fine. You can get ideas on how to improve your state too, just like we're doing here. Good things are coming ahead. Remember, like, subscribe to the show. I do a lot of different shows, including a radio broadcast. You guys can catch that, all of it on theRaisingCainShow.com. And you can follow me at Nate Cain for WV on pretty much all of your favorite social media. I'm on it all. And the last thing I want to mention is, as you guys are looking to how to improve things or how to make things better in your environment or where you live, or, reach out to Jim, reach out to me. We're more than happy to share our ideas with you and, help come up with solutions. If you're a owner of a company, a tech company, reach out to us. I'll put you in touch with Jim, or you can reach out to Jim directly and be happy to make those connections. I want to thank you all for joining and for watching. And I want to remind you that we can make a difference. We just have to step out and do something about it. God bless you, and God bless all of those that are watching the show and our country. Have a great night.
Raise some cane. You gotta raise some cane. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless, day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.